Have you ever wondered why Korean fried chicken tastes so familiar? Although fried chicken evolved independently across many different countries, fried chicken is a distinctly American invention. The origins of fried chicken can be traced back to enslaved Africans who brought together Scottish techniques of deep frying chicken with fat and seasoning techniques from Western African cooking. One of the earliest recipes of fried chicken came from the British cookbook in 1747 called The Art of Cookery, made plain and easy by Hannah Glass. The recipe, which was a hit in Britain and the colonies, particularly in the southern states, called for the butchering of pieces of chicken to be floured, then fried in lard. While there's not a lot of strong evidence that fried chicken is from Western Africa or it was invented, then brought over in the transatlantic slave trade, West Africans did have a history of cooking chicken. They typically would use a method of braising their chicken. This is most likely the slave population that became linked to fried chicken because they were already familiar with cooking chicken and because the prevalence of poultry here in the United States. This is where the history of chicken takes a racist turn in the early 19th century. Fried chicken then became linked to Southern states, and Southerners started to link it to racist stereotypes connected to African Americans. They depicted them as poultry thieves and ravenous eaters of fried chicken. You start to see the popular stereotypes used in the connection of African Americans eating certain foods, reinforcing the idea that African Americans were not intellectual. Two of the most popular images used in terms of food was fried chicken and watermelon. Ironically, plenty of white people love these same foods, but for whatever reason, the idea and the negative stereotypes associating these foods with African Americans, and it still exists today. The irony of it is that before the 20th century, fried chicken was seen as a luxury item only eaten on special occasions. Although the recipe is extremely simple, not everyone has the right kitchen tools or the access to poultry to make it at home until dramatic improvements in poultry farming in the early 20th century. As the United States began to flex its military muscle at the beginning of the 20th century, Black GIs taught the world about delicacies of American barbecue, chitlins, and fried chicken. Motivated to settle overseas because of the enduring racism of the United States and the relative social acceptance of African Americans in other countries, many former servicemen opened up restaurants and shared their beloved recipes and turned regional soul food into a global phenomenon. The global spread of soul food really took off after the end of World War II. Recently discharged Black military veterans in the European theater stayed overseas and opened and operated restaurants. At first, they mainly cooked for African Americans who were on active duty, but these home-style meals also found patrons from an unexpected source: foreign foodies. Europe was not the only place where soul food thrived. African American veterans stayed behind to open restaurants in Asia. After serving in Korea and Vietnam, these countries became well known for soul food restaurants with a patronage of both African Americans and Native Asians. American soldiers were stationed in South Korea during the Korean War, introduced the concept of frying and battering chicken as a substitute for turkey on Thanksgiving. This was likely the first introduction of the food to the Korean people, who were primarily steaming chicken or eating it in stews. However, it would not be for decades after the end of the Korean War that American-style fried chicken took off in Korea. During the 60s, the first ever rotisserie chicken shop opened up in Korea, along with the invention of the yellow bag chicken. Salarymen would bring home yellow bag chicken, which was a whole rotisserie chicken in a bag, and give it to their families. At the time, chicken was still not widely consumed in Korea, thus the price was considerably expensive. Chicken became viewed as a luxury item that all families look forward to eating once in a while. The reputation and popularity began to skyrocket. It was this nostalgia that helped fuel the boom of the coming fried chicken movement. Then, two changes occurred during the 70s. Cheap cooking oil became widely available and fried chicken became more affordable. This made it possible for families to prepare their own fried chicken, season it, coat it in flour before dunking the entire bird in hot oil. Fried chicken then went mainstream in 1977 with the opening of Lem's Fried Chicken in the basement of Seoul's Sinsky department store. The owner of Lem's Fried Chicken had traveled to the United States in 1975 for university and saw how KFC sold its fried chicken in pieces. He began experimenting and creating his own ginseng chicken and selling his creation in a 6-piece set. Lem's Fried Chicken became the first fried chicken franchise in South Korea, and the appetite for the dish only grew larger as KFC entered the market in 1984. As of February of 2022, there were a staggering 87,000 Korean fried chicken joints in South Korea. In an ironic twist, The phenomenon has gone full circle as Korean fried chicken stores now open up restaurants here in the United States.